Imagine coming home after a family celebration, only to find a fine slapped on your windshield for parking where you should be allowed. That's exactly how our story began. I remember it like it was yesterday, a warm summer evening after my sister's graduation party. The house was still buzzing with laughter, and our driveway, filled with the cars of delighted guests, looked like a small parking lot. That night, as I was about to drift off to sleep, I noticed something bizarre under my windshield, a bright pink piece of paper. My heart sank as I read the words, "Driveway parking violation, fine $150. I couldn't believe it. This was our own driveway, a place we always thought was off limits to anyone but our family. I raced inside to show my dad, Thomas Reynolds, who, as a senior loan officer at one of the area's well-respected banks, was known for his unwavering integrity and attention to detail. Dad's face turned serious as he examined the fine, muttering about some obscure clause buried deep in the HOA rulebook. Section 7.3, he read aloud, disbelief lacing his tone. The explanation was absurd. Apparently, having more than 2 vehicles parked in our driveway was a violation, regardless of the circumstances. When I questioned why our family celebration should warrant such punishment, Dad simply sighed. He calmly explained that rules were rules, even if they seemed out of touch with reality. But as the night progressed, it became painfully clear that this was only the beginning. The following morning, as I sipped my coffee, another pink slip arrived. This one cited our lawn for having grass taller than 3.5 inches. I couldn't help but laugh, half in disbelief and half in anger. Soon, it wasn't just our driveway and lawn being targeted. Fines began piling up for the slightest infractions, garbage bins left too close to the curb, a tree branch that barely brushed a neighbor's fence. Even the placement of our front door mat was apparently a problem. Each citation felt more personal than the last, and I started to sense that someone in the HOA was using these fines to wield power rather than uphold community standards. That someone turned out to be Karen Matthews, the HOA president. Karen was a force of nature, a stickler for every little rule, and someone who seemed to relish the power she held over the neighborhood. The more we got fined, the more it became clear Karen was targeting my family, and there was a method to her madness. But here's where the twist of fate comes in. Coincidence or cosmic irony? Karen had applied for a $1.2 million renovation loan for the HOA, and guess who was the senior loan officer assigned to review that application? My dad, Thomas Reynolds. I watched in amazement as my dad, with his calm, methodical approach, began sifting through the HOA's financial records. Over dinner that evening, while the rest of us exchanged worried glances over our plates, Dad quietly informed us that something wasn't right. Despite the hefty fines the HOA had collected, over $122,000 in just a few months, the money wasn't being used for community improvements. Instead, there were discrepancies and odd entries in the financial statements that suggested mismanagement and possibly even fraud. His discovery painted a picture of an HOA that wasn't about nurturing a friendly neighborhood, but rather about exploiting every little rule for personal gain. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Dad started compiling evidence. I remember him sitting at his laptop, eyes narrowed in concentration, as he compared the official financial records with the fines we received. At the same time, our neighbors began to notice that something was off too. One by one, residents shared their own stories of random fines. People were getting ticketed for things like improper garbage storage or unauthorized tree trimming. Soon, murmurs of discontent spread like wildfire throughout Pinecrest Gardens. The situation reached a boiling point when one of our neighbors, Mr. Gonzalez, a retired judge with a sharp mind for justice, convened an impromptu meeting at the local community center. There, we all learned that Karen had been abusing her power, selectively enforcing rules, and even bending them to her favor. The real kicker was that Karen's own friend, Diane, was caught violating the very rules she imposed on others. Diane had an oversized RV parked in her yard, something explicitly forbidden by the HOA guidelines. It was like watching a high-stakes drama unfold right in our suburban neighborhood. Karen, who had always been the authoritarian figure, tried to justify her actions during an HOA board meeting that evening. She projected an image of impeccable financial management and transparency, even showing off official-looking documents. But the evidence Dad had uncovered was irrefutable. As he methodically pointed out the inconsistencies, misallocated funds, missing receipts, and fines that simply didn't add up, the room fell silent, each of us feeling a mix of vindication and outrage. Karen's carefully constructed facade began to crumble, revealing a pattern of fraud and mismanagement that many in the room had suspected but never dared to confront. Then came the most shocking moment of all. During the heated meeting, Karen, in a desperate bid to regain control, tried to pressure my brother into influencing the bank's decision on the renovation loan. My dad, always the epitome of professionalism, immediately flagged this as a major breach of ethics. The tension in the room was palpable as the assembled homeowners, many of whom had quietly suffered under Karen's arbitrary fines, rallied together. It was at that moment that the community decided they had enough. An emergency vote was taken, and in a resounding 92% majority, the board members who had enabled Karen's tyrannical behavior were ousted. As if that wasn't enough, the fallout continued. The bank, upon realizing the potential fraud in the loan application and the irregularities in the financial records, launched a formal investigation. Suddenly, the fine print battles over driveway parking and grass heights became part of a much larger scandal. The neighborhood, once divided by petty disputes, found itself united against a common enemy. We organized community meetings, collected signatures for a petition demanding full transparency, and even managed to unearth more evidence of impropriety that implicated several board members. In the midst of all this chaos, there were moments of unexpected beauty. I recall a chilly autumn evening when, after the scandal had reached its peak, a block party was organized, a spontaneous celebration of community resilience and unity. Neighbors who had never spoken before now shared stories over hot cocoa and laughter under string lights. It was a poignant reminder that sometimes the darkest moments can bring people together in ways that truly heal a community. For me, the journey from receiving that first inexplicable fine to watching our neighborhood rally for justice was nothing short of transformative. It wasn't just about fighting against an oppressive HOA. It was about standing up for fairness, transparency, and the rights of every homeowner in Pinecrest Gardens. My dad's steady resolve and deep sense of integrity, combined with the collective strength of our neighbors, turned what could have been a small personal grievance into a landmark moment for our community. In the aftermath, as the interim board took charge and the district attorney began to piece together the puzzle of financial misconduct, I found myself reflecting on the nature of power and accountability. It became clear that rules, when enforced without compassion or common sense, can become weapons. But when people come together and demand justice, even the most entrenched systems of corruption can be dismantled. I learned that night that sometimes the fight for what's right requires both courage and the willingness to challenge authority, no matter how intimidating it may seem. As I wrap up this story, I want to leave you with this thought. Sometimes a simple act, a fine on your windshield or a random citation, can be the spark that ignites a movement for change. Our family's ordeal with the HOA was a lesson in resilience, a testament to the power of community, and a reminder that, with enough determination, even the most deeply rooted injustices can be overturned. It was a long, winding battle that taught us the true meaning of fairness, and it brought our neighborhood closer than ever before. So, next time you find yourself facing what seems like an unreasonable rule or fine, remember that standing up for yourself might just lead to something greater than you ever imagined. After all, knowledge is power, community is strength, and sometimes, karma has a funny way of setting things right.